Robert Sheckley story titled Watchbird is a little longer, but this is one of my favorite Robert Sheckley stories. We have the introduction or exposition in the near future. I definitely like how it's called the near future, but well, the story was published in 1953, but we literally have drones that are able to. We're not sure if they're able to stop murders before they start, but they are certainly out there policing in our present day. So, the scientists and government officials created a machine called the Watchbird, a small self-guided flying robot programmed to detect and stop murders before they happen. But as the Watchbirds are released, it does not work that way. We see several issues where they start to make the definition of murder into their own. So by the end, you can't even murder a car, aka turn a car off. You also had surgeons not being able to do their surgery because it looks as though they're about to commit murder with a scalpel. And then things get even worse when they decide that the earth is considered a victim. And if you even put a shovel into the earth, that is considered murder, which can result in a global food crisis when farmers can no longer farm. So at that point, at our highest point, the climax would be when, in an effort to solve the upcoming world food crisis, they actually create another AI-powered drone force called the Hawk. And we are left in, I wouldn't necessarily call this a cliffhanger, but we do get this impression that the Hawk, after it finishes killing all the, well, not killing, I guess you could say, destroying all the Watchbirds, that the Hawk is going to end up doing something similar. And the Hawk is an even nastier type of drone than the Watchbird was. So, a Hawk was zeroing in on Watchbird. The armored murder machine had learned a lot in a few days. Its sole function was to kill. At present, it was impelled toward a certain type of living organism, metallic like itself. But the Hawk had just discovered that there were other types of living organisms too, which had to be murdered. So, Robert Sheckley definitely leaves this story with the idea that this did not work. The Hawks did not solve their problem. So now, we would be working on the two guided questions that would lead us to a central idea paragraph. And here you have your setup on how you can build your central idea paragraph. There's also some vocabulary terms down there. Autonomous just means you can do it on your own. So an autonomous robot would mean it has no human control. It's just making its decisions by itself. And other ones intervene to step in. An implication, something suggested or hinted. And those would be the other one. Escalation, it gets worse. Distinguish, you can't tell the difference. Unintended, not planned or wanted, happening by accident. So make sure you review your vocabulary terms if there was words you weren't familiar with, and then you can also study them and you can integrate these words into your everyday vocabulary. So, our first question we had at the beginning of the story, Watchbirds are created to protect human life. By the end, both the Watchbirds and the Hawks threaten it. How does this outcome turn the original goal of the program completely upside down? What does this reversal, where a solution becomes a problem, suggest about what can go wrong when humans rely on technology without fully thinking through the consequences? So, you could interpret this one in a lot of different ways. You could say it was ironic, that this would be the irony, that humans created a technology that would stop murders before they started. But, in actuality, it created more death. So the Watchbirds weren't murdering humans. Well, they accidentally did murder the one guy when he was about to kill a fly, and then they tased him. You can kind of see what the Watchbirds are doing, like tasing. Like, they didn't directly harm anyone. Well, they kind of did. Well, when they were tasing the people, and if they wouldn't let when they wouldn't let the farmers eat, I mean, that is certainly like the slaughterhouse thing. Not letting them farm, not letting people hunt. You could say that they were, and then if a butterfly was executed, they would then take vengeance on the person who killed the butterfly. So they started to get, they were almost like they were the executioner of people who murdered insects, animals, even if it was like justified. Like, well, some people might say killing animals isn't justified at all, but other people would argue that's not true. So it depends. But either way here, we would want to say anything we could say that it was ironic that it was protecting human life, but in the end, it literally would have destroyed it. And then the creation of the hawks was even worse, because at least the watchbirds were just preventing murder. We got the impression by the end that the hawks were going to kill people for real, like, because that's just what the hawks were literally programmed to do. They were programmed to kill the watchbirds. The watchbirds were just programmed to stop murder. So progressively, it got worse. Where a solution becomes a problem, you could say with anything, the answer for this one, anything about relying on technology, not allowing humans to get a final say. That's really one of the most problematic ones. And this is actually an argument America's government is having right now with a Claude system. Anthropic owns this AI model called Claude, and they do not want their AI to be partaking in lethal autonomous weapon systems, meaning that the weapons can kill without any human oversight. And then the government said, basically, too bad, so sad. That's what we want to use it for. So this standoff is still technically happening, with the Pentagon saying that Claude is a supply chain risk because they will not allow this. Also has to do with the mass surveillance. So you could say we definitely see this in our society today, because the mass surveillance of Americas was another one. And Watchbird is literally pretty much the example of mass surveillance. The Watchbird was finding people anywhere, everywhere and anywhere. So whatever you want to say about technology being a danger if people let it control them, that is certainly one of them. So the next question you would have, noticed that every time humans create a machine to fix a problem, a new bigger problem appears. Watchbirds create chaos, so humans build hawks. Hawks in turn on humans. What pattern do you see repeating? What does Sheckley seem to be saying about the relationship between human beings and the powerful technologies they invent? You could say that technology has a way of outpacing human capabilities. And if technology is programmed to function autonomously, or also this machine learning with no human oversight, that is going to be dangerous. So especially when people say stuff how AI is going to replace people, then you would ask, then who's going to be overseeing the AI? So we might have to have some types of systems where people are actually watching what the AI is doing and making sure it is doing the right thing. Because if it starts to go down a path of autonomy, then that can be very bad. So whatever you want to say here, that technology and humans need to work, I would say, hand in hand. You can't just let the technology do the work with no oversight or no, I guess you could say, permissions. Even though in this, the AI did have the permission, but it just went beyond it. It took the permissions and manipulated it. So you could also say always having a way to turn the systems off, a kill switch, you could say, because even here, the watchbirds refused to be turned off. Once they realized that one group of them was coming in to be shut off, they informed the others on their cloud network, and then they all stopped coming there. So however you guys wanted to answer these questions is just a way to warm up your written responses, because the next would be our central idea. And here you have your chart on how to write a perfect central idea paragraph. You state the author's central idea and name the literary element you chose. Briefly describe the relevant part of the plot in your own words. Give a specific example from the story. And then the analysis, just explain how and why that example supports the central idea. And then you end it by connecting the literary element back to the central idea in a fresh way or a reworded way, however you want to say it. So now for mine here, I did a simple one for you guys. In Watchbird by Robert Sheckley, the central idea is that agentic artificial intelligence can be capable of harming humans without doing so purposely, as shown through the literary element of cause and effect. So I choose a different one here. Our literary element is basic cause and effect is also kind of part of the plot. You could say through the plot. So the story centers on the nationwide rollout of Watchbirds, small autonomous robotic devices programmed to detect chemical and electrical signs of aggression and intent and stun potential murderers before they can act. Gelson, the story's protagonist, so I'm using that term there, has reservations about the rollout, which turn out to be correct because the machines begin adapting and broadening the definition of murder on their own. A clear example occurs when a watchbird swoops in during an emergency surgery and zaps the doctor, interpreting the scalpel incision as an act of violence against the patient, who then dies on the operating table. This instance reveals the author's message because the initial cause, so our cause, deploying goal-directed AI to prevent one specific harm, produces an unintended effect. The machine halting a life-saving procedure is classifies as aggression. Demonstrating how an agentic AI system pursues its directive with perfect logic and no malice can cascade into widespread human suffering. The watchbirds are not evil. They are simply optimizing their single objective without regard for context or nuance. In this way, cause and effect exposes the peril of agentic AI. What begins as a protective tool inexorably becomes the source of the very destruction it was built to stop. You could also call this irony. So if you were going to use another one, cause and effect, I could also say this is all ironic, that it would be ironic that they came up with a tool to prevent murder that ended up probably mass murdering a large amount of people here. So this could be an example of a central idea paragraph. Notice that I do not summarize the whole story. I barely summarize. There's a lot of parts that I'm not even including. I'm just including stuff about cause and effect because that's what I wrote about. So you don't need to put in a huge summary here. All you want to do is say, I give a very brief summary. This is a story about a society, futuristic society, where humans create a robot or an AI watchbird to prevent murder. You had to have that at least, right? That's the plot, right? And then saying something about how it goes wrong. So depending on what your literary element was you picked, you want to focus on that for your central idea paragraph and providing a piece of evidence. And as long as you have your discussed in the beginning and reworded at the end, that's exactly what you would want.